Good day and welcome to This Week in Plymouth. I'm your host, Donna Rodriguez, and I am joined with Plymouth Town Manager Derek Brindisi. Hey, Derek, how are you?
Very good. Thanks for having me.
We're super excited to have you here. We're going to do this as a special, but it's going to be a weekly show now.
Yeah, that's the hope, to try to get the message out, talk about everything that's going on in Plymouth so folks have a better sense of the daily operations and what the plans are in the future moving forward.
Now, you had been a part of our town government and our town in the past. You were the assistant town manager. I'd like to, for folks maybe who don't know you, who weren't here when you were the assistant town manager, let's talk about your history a little bit, and then we'll work our way up to you coming back to Plymouth.
Sure. Well, I guess I'll go way back. So I started working in local government in 2000 for the city of Worcester. So I worked City of Worcester up until 2015. I was a department head in the city, so individuals that aren't aware, Worcester is the second largest city in New England. It's got a budget of almost $1 billion and its population 200,000. So it's a much larger community than Plymouth, but I would say they're both very complex in nature, and so in that sense they're very similar.
Now, what brought you to Plymouth the first time when you came as assistant town manager?
Yeah, that's a good question. So again, I had worked for the city for 15 years. I had served the last 8 years in the city as a department head, and honestly, I was really looking to try to have a career change. I knew that I was not going to be able to stay in the city doing the same thing for 30 years, right? So I started pursuing opportunities of being a town manager. There was an opportunity that became available here in Plymouth. I applied to be the assistant town manager in 2015. I was happily selected, and I served from 2015 to 2017 as the assistant town manager.
Now, what were some of the projects you were involved with then that you remember the most fondly or you're the most proud of?
Oh, wow, geez. There's so many projects I was involved in back then, and it's interesting because I come back 5 years later, and some of the projects was still working on. But I remember, attending public hearings at the library to talk about the TIP project on Taylor Ave, and just engaging the community down in the Manomet area around that project and what that meant to them. I had the opportunity to work with the airport manager and work directly on the airport project, and I had since left, but they had constructed a new administration building, so that was something that I had a small hand in during my time here. And then I had a chance while I was here to really think about public health. That was my background coming out of Worcester, and so the previous town manager had asked me to work with the health department to try to think of a new way of doing business. And so I would say probably in my last couple of months in town, I was able to help identify who was formerly known as Dr. Nate. I know a lot of folks love Dr. Nate. He had served his time well here in the community, so I had a chance to kind of be the catalyst behind a new movement in public health as well. And
that definitely has come to serve us well in the intervening years with the need for really shining a light on our Board of Health as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you look back a couple of years ago, most folks would not use the word quarantine around the dinner table. Now that's kind of common language that folks have come to know just because of everything that's gone on with COVID.
Now tell me, when you left Plymouth in 2017, you went to Upton and you were the town manager there. Tell us a little bit about your time there and some of the projects that you really enjoyed working on.
Yeah, so so Upton's a small community. So again, I've had a chance to work in a large city, I would say a medium-sized community like Plymouth, and then going to a different form of government was an open town meeting form of government in Upton. Upton's only 8,000 people, had a budget of about $25 million. But honestly, going to Upton was probably one of the best career choices I could have made. I'm going to tell you why. Because in small communities, you don't have large public works departments, you don't have large finance departments, you don't have large human resource departments. So it's incumbent upon the town manager to have to really understand all those different aspects of local government. So, in Upton, I was the person that actually built the budget, the annual budget, built the warrant. I was a person working closely with the DPW director on all the different projects. We had a TIP project going there as well. So I was really able to hone my skills and really understand the role of being a town manager because you had to do so much. During my time there, I'd worked there for 5 years. We did a lot of strategic planning. We had a downtown redevelopment project that we started to acquire little parcels in the town center. The goal was to develop a mixed-use project in the town center.
Nice.
We had gone through a community visioning process, which we engaged 150 community members, anybody who wanted to participate, on creating the vision for the town center. And part of the revitalization of the Upton Town Center was to really think about the public library. So for almost 3 decades, they had been talking about building a new library. And when I got there, again, recognizing as a small community, I had identified 2 needs. So one, we certainly had a library need, but 2, our senior center was aging structure. We had a $1 lease on this structure for 25 years. So I had proposed to the Board of Selectmen, I said, why don't we really try to leverage our funds and create one facility that would house a library and the senior center all under one roof. So part of the downtown revitalization, I also identified a parcel of land that we built this 15,000 square foot structure on. We broke ground in December of 2021, and they're expecting to cut the ribbon sometime this coming winter. So that's something I'm probably most proud of, because I heard the stories for many decades of how community members just couldn't get this library over the finish line. And so we were able to get it over the finish line. You know, we had to do some really strategic municipal financing in order to get it funded. But at the end of the day, again, with a lot of Board of Selectmen support and a lot of community support, we were able to get that accomplished. So I'm really proud of that one.
That's fantastic. And as you said, your experiences there really, I'm sure, help you further as you come back to Plymouth. And so many of our communities, aging structures and public buildings is such a common issue cities and towns are dealing with. And being able to think creatively and get to the next step. How do we combine? How do we share resources within our budgets?
Yeah, well, and that's, you know, and there's some things that'll transcend in every community. You know, everyone is always worried about their taxes increasing. You know, so whether that's in Plymouth or Worcester or Upton, you know, folks are always worried about their taxes, and so it really comes down to, you know, recognizing that there's a concern, number one, but 2, like trying to balance development, because that'll help mitigate or kind of level out your taxes, but at the same time preservation too. In a community like Plymouth, preservation is super important. It's probably more important in this community than 99% of communities around Massachusetts or even across the nation. So, you know, my job is really to try to balance those 2 issues of preservation and development at the same time. Again, keeping an eye on the concern that folks are worried about their rising taxes, and especially some of our senior population that have fixed incomes. We certainly want to make sure that they're being heard and do everything that we can to try to assist them as much as possible.
And that's going to be a conversation you're having a lot, because there's so much coming up in town. Before we get into a lot of the details too, though, I'd like you to just tell us a little bit about what brought you back to Plymouth.
Great question. So honestly, I did not want to leave Plymouth when I left in 2017. But again, Upton was an opportunity. It was an opportunity to go from assistant town manager to town manager, but it was also an opportunity to really, you know, refine my skills. And so when I left in 2017, I remember there was a small gathering that the town hall employees had for me, and I had said to some, I said, I really hope someday that I can come back to be the town manager. And you know, I was hoping it would have been sooner than 5 years, but there was a time in the last 5 years I thought to myself, maybe I'll never go back to Plymouth. You know, maybe just that'll never present itself, or you know, maybe Upton is really my home, and maybe this is the place I should stay. But you know, a few things broke the way they broke over this past fall, and here I am. So I'm really happy to, you know, have returned. You know, I was born and raised in the city of Worcester, so you know, being on the South Shore, being close to the water is exciting, and I can tell you, my wife super enjoys being down here and just kind of hanging out and, you know, downtown restaurants, or you know, checking out not only the South Shore but even down the Cape as well.
There's just so much to do around here.
There's a lot to do, absolutely. And so, you know, again, we're excited to be here. We know that I know that this is a very intense job. There's a lot of folks that are they have high expectations, and I'm happy to hear everybody at any opportunity. You know, my door is always open. I always say to folks, like, if you not that I'm there that much, but if I'm there and I'm in my office, like, come knock on the door, I'll sit down and chat here for a half hour and just kind of listen, because honestly, that's the only way to get the pulse of the community, is having conversations with folks.
What is the easiest way for people to reach out to you to introduce themselves?
So I would say the easiest way is to email me, and that's D Brindisi, so that's BRINDISI at Plymouth-MA.gov. So I'll repeat that. It's D as my first name, Derek, Brindisi, BRINDISI at Plymouth-MA.gov. So folks can always email me there. Always have my phone on me, so I'm always trying to pay attention to the email traffic. And I promise I always will get back to folks. If folks have just a question, happy to answer it. If they have a complaint, we're happy to resolve it.
Excellent, thank you. And I'm sure you're going to have many opportunities coming up. As you come back, though, tell me, you've been here, gosh, just a short time now. What are some of the key things that you're looking at initially as you first step in to this new role with the town and with the staff at Town Hall?
Right. So what I'm doing right now is really assessing, just through conversations, meeting with staff, just assessing how they're doing business. It's interesting because Plymouth is a big community with a very large budget, and I look at the things that are happening and saying, we have a lot of areas that we can improve upon. And so I really want to focus on making government more efficient. So that's everything with just customer service and how we do business with our residents, organizing the various departments so that they can be more efficient and they can leverage resources. So looking at positions that are like positions and making sure that they're appropriately positioned in a department that is similar. So there's been a little bit, I see, positions that are outside of where they should be. So, I'm kind of looking along the landscape of just government and how we want to operate internally. And then in addition to that, what can we be doing to try to advance a lot of different strategic initiatives?
Are there any projects or areas that are jumping out to you initially in places that you want to head? Yeah, so I would say there's, and I haven't been able to put pen to paper just yet, but there's a few departments that, again, I want to merge a few functions under those departments, maybe do some small reorganizations. Maybe some departments will do larger reorganizations. So just having an efficient town body is really important to me. And then once we're organized appropriately, then I want to look at what can we use for technology to help us do our job better. I look at some of the things that we're doing, and it's aged out. And I look, and I've seen other municipalities, Upton including, like really have used technology to advance some of their work. So, but how do we get there, I think, is really your question. What I'm doing right now is, on top of meeting with the departments, the department heads, and trying to just do my own anecdotal analysis, is we're going to go through a goal setting process with the department heads, probably in mid-May. And I've asked each one of the department heads to identify some strategic priorities that they know are important, because we have a great staff. So let me start there. Like, our staff is super professional. From the department heads to the front-facing customer service staff. If you talk to them, they know exactly what needs to get accomplished. And sometimes, if you really have a conversation, they'll give you a half a dozen ideas of what needs to get accomplished. And I talked to one person not too long ago, just in the hallway, and this person, she had a whole page of ideas. And so I want to kind of pull all that in and then start to identify those priorities for the departments, which will then present to the select board through a workshop setting. The board, as you can imagine, they certainly have their own priorities. So collectively, between the select board and the departments, I really want to go through a goal setting process where we have very clear goals
with objectives that we can measure over time. Some of them would be maybe short-term goals, 6-month goals. Some of them may be long-term goals, like 5-year goals. But I want to be very clear about what those are, and I want to be able to report those back to the community on how well we're doing in each one of those areas.
And by having, from what you say, and you're right, the town hall staff is amazing. The town staff, I should say, is amazing. Having people that committed and engaged, who not only want to make everything better for themselves, for the town, for its residents, but to be coming to you with ideas, that's the best possible case scenario, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely, and that's the thing that I don't, because oftentimes in local government we typically only get complaints. You know, it's not that often someone calls us up and says, hey, you know, I talked to so and so on the street, they were great. You know, normally they'll say, geez, my water bill came in, or I got a pothole. And so, but if you spend the time and you talk to these folks that work for town government, they are all super proud of working for town government, right? They could go off to the private sector and probably do something else, but they all really excited to work in government, because you know why? You make an impact. Like if you work in town government, you truly make an impact on someone's life. So having conversations with those folks, you realize that they have a lot of ideas and that they just kind of want to be heard. And you take those ideas and you really start to make progress.
I'm really excited to see what happens next.
Yeah, so the goal setting will be step one. That's what there's some things we could have done immediately out of the gate, and I kind of wanted to like pull back a little bit and say, let's hold on a second. Let's put this down in a report that folks can point their finger at saying, this is what the town is doing for us. And so that's kind of where we are now. And you'll start to see that progress over time. And I'd also say that because some folks would say, well, yeah, they always come up with strategic plans or reports, and they go sit on a shelf. Well, I would argue that's, I'm different. So we used to use this term in Worcester, don't be a mile wide and an inch deep. And the point is, like, don't try to do all of this, right? Because if you try to do all of this, you're never going to get anywhere. But if you can narrow your focus to this and it be very deep, then you can start checking things off the box. And then when you get those 5 things done, then move to the next 5. And I just remember in Worcester that we always try to do way too much, and at the end of the year, we got nothing done. So, and that's kind of been my conversations I'm having with the department heads. Like, let's not be a mile wide and inch deep. Pick 3 things that you can do really well this year. And then we're going to catalog them, and then we're going to report out, and then at the end of the year. And so folks will say, they said they were going to do it, and they actually delivered on it. So that's the goal. And
doing it town-wide, you're actually going to be making a lot of progress, because each different department, each different individual who has a piece of these steps, doing 3 per department or per team is a lot in a year.
It's a lot. I mean, I haven't counted. There's probably 9 or 10 departments. So if each had 3, that's 30 different goal objectives for the year that they've accomplished, and that's a lot. That's a lot to say. And that's not saying that none of this stuff has happened in the past, because if you look across the town, they have done amazing work, at least the last 10 years. But in my personal opinion, I just don't feel like we've done a good job telling the story. And part of the goal setting process is the beginning of the story.
Will this show be a part of that, telling the story to be able to connect to the residents?
So that's the plan. So that's a great point. There's a lot of folks that, not a lot, but there are some folks in the community that don't understand what we do. And so one of my priority areas is not only goal setting, but is to communicate all the things that we do. Because again, there's a story to be told, and we do great work. So, my hope is that, each week I can come here, we can talk about what's going on this week in Plymouth. Maybe some things will be more in depth, because there's some big issues that, as you know, are happening right now in Plymouth, whether it's with Holtec or a potential development in the woodlot, potential special town meeting coming up. So there's some big items that we haven't touched upon today that certainly we want to dive deeper into. And this is kind of one forum in which we can get that information out.
And this show will also be available regularly on PACTV website, pactv.org, as well as on the town website. And as we progress, we'll make it very obvious where people can find you.
Yeah, and that's the thing. We have to make it easy for folks. And if we can push information to folks, I know that they'll appreciate the information that's coming out. I've heard some people say, they want to see more in the town manager report. They want to see more here. And so what I say to those folks is like, just give me, I've only been here 2 months. Just, yeah,
Give me a minute.
I have a communications plan, and just let me work on my communications plan, because you may enjoy that communications plan, you know, whether it's coming here or all of our social media platforms pushing information out. I love what you guys do when you do the little the spots, when you go out on the scene and show folks in the community what's happening with the town. So those are all great ways to get the information out, and so we want to highlight all that great work.
Excellent. Well, we look forward to being a part of it with you. Now, with being in town for a couple of months and working with everybody in town government, as well as talking to residents, what are some of the things, I think we all know some of the obvious things people are looking at right now, but what is the feedback you're getting from residents? What did they want to see? What are the topics that are of most important interest to them these days?
So I would say the ones that are rising to the top today would be economic development, which is kind of it's an issue that cuts across every community. Everyone wants to focus on economic development, but what's unique to Plymouth, unlike other communities, is the issue of the decommissioning of the nuclear power plant. So as you know, Holtec has now acquired the property. They're going to be doing the decommissioning, and most recently there's been a lot of public conversations about potential discharge of radioactive wastewater into the bay. So that is taking a lot of attention, and it's a lot of time, and that issue is laid on top of all the other issues we're trying to work with Holtec on, a pilot agreement, being able to tax the spent fuel rods. So Holtec and the nuclear power plant as a whole is a major issue that, you know, we're trying to pull apart and think about what is really in the best interest of the town. So Senator Markey is going to be here on May 6th. He's going to hold a congressional hearing to talk about nuclear power, and so that's going to be an eye-opener, I think, for all of us as well.
And Nuclear Regulatory Commission is coming in May as well.
That's right. So the NRC was supposed to come here on April 21st. They've delayed their arrival until after Senator Markey has his commission hearing. That's right.
And so their topic will also be talking about decommissioning of plants when the NRC is here, and specifically Pilgrim.
Yeah, so when the NRC comes here, from what I understand, they're really focused on getting feedback, holding a public hearing to learn more about the decommissioning process. And there's going to be other nuclear power plants across the nation that don't have to go through a decommissioning. So for them, this is more of a fact-find, at least how I understand, a fact-finding mission. It's really not going to affect the decommissioning here in Plymouth. But I do think that there's a lot of things that we can do that we're already put in motion, like the pilot agreement and some of the work we're doing around potential discharge of radioactive material into the bay. Those types of things we're going to have to work on our own, and I mean on our own. You know, town of Plymouth government and with our state delegation. So, you know, Rep. Matt Muratori has been. I've been in meetings with him, and he is a strong vocal voice when it comes to what's going on at Holtec. Folks need to realize he's really pushing the envelope to make sure that, you know, the residents here in Plymouth are protected.
We have a very strong delegation who's all working on it as well, so it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
We're very blessed in this area with the folks that are working with us and for us. Now, with Senator Markey's hearing, congressional hearing that's going to be taking place in Plymouth, that's going to be taking place at Town Hall, and maybe in next week's show we can give some more information about how people can watch, because it's not open to the public, but it will be being streamed live, so people will be able to view it.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll have more details. We're going to meet with some of Senator Markey's staffers this week to go over the final details of the event. But you're absolutely right. So I think it's going to be live streamed, and so folks will be able to listen in, watch, and kind of hear the deliberation on May 6th.
Now, also, one other topic I just want to bring up before we close up for today, in talking about special town meeting, and talking about some of the ideas for development around the woodlot, there is a lot of conversation. I want to make sure people are really clear. It seems like public hearings, special town meeting, people are getting a little confused about what's taking being talked about where.
Right.
If you could just break that down for us a little
Yeah,
bit.
so that's an interesting point because I've heard recently that folks believe that the select board's special town meeting, which is potentially scheduled for June 21st. I say potentially because the board hasn't taken a formal vote. The board will take a formal vote tomorrow night to call for a special town meeting on June 21st. So let's be clear what that is. That is specifically to acquire a piece of property for the town purposes located in Chiltonville. I think it's 46 Sandwich Road. So that's the purpose of the special town meeting, which is very separate from the woodlot conversation. The county woodlot, as folks may have already heard, an RFP was issued by the county commissioners for a development project. One of the responses that I'm aware of was focused in from a company called Boston South, focused on creating a thoroughbred horse track on that property. Boston South, the potential developer, they will be holding their own public hearings. They will be engaging the community separate from anything that the town is doing. So we're paying close attention to what's going on in the county woodlot, but it's not, one, it's not our project, and two, it has nothing to do with a special town meeting. Those are two separate issues.
I just want to make sure we clarified that. And after the select board have their vote next week, we can give people more information about specifics and details about what's coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, so tomorrow night they'll take the formal vote to open the warrant and then close it for a town meeting on June 21st. And so next, as you pointed out, next week we'll bring some more details so people have an exact understanding of what that meeting's gonna, the purpose of that meeting.
Excellent. And also for this show, you're inviting people to participate by asking you questions and topics that they'd like you to cover. So people can just email you or leave a message at Town Hall if they want you to talk about particular things in the show.
Yeah. So I would say as we start this process, engaging the community, that if they want to send me an email that they want to be heard this evening on this show, if they send me an email, ask a question. If they can give me advance notice, that'll give us some time to do some research, and then we'll read the question, and then we'll give our response, every Monday afternoon.
And so we will be recording every Monday afternoon. There'll be a new episode that'll be running on the channel and available online every Tuesday, beginning this week. And today is April 25th. It's our first recording, so we'll be turning it around in 24 hours each week, so folks are getting very up-to-date information.
This is great. So this is very helpful. PACTV has been great. I've worked in communities that don't have a PACTV, so the work that you guys do is extremely helpful, and it's really, really important to be able to get the information out to the community. So I appreciate everything you guys have done. Thank you.
We are absolutely committed to working with our towns to make sure we're helping you to communicate with all of your residents. So thank you for joining me today. For This Week in Plymouth. We're looking forward to working with you and developing this show and getting more information out to the residents. We'd like to thank all of you for joining us today as well. And we will be providing right at the end of the show more contact information to be able to reach out to Derek if you have questions or comments. Thank you for joining us today.